Well, Sarah, earlier we were seeing rockets coming over that way, and we did find out a little bit after the live that we had with you that those were actually rockets being fired into Israel. It wasn't the Iron Dome, it was rockets being fired into Israel from Gaza. But the way that we're standing right now, and I'm hoping not, but there were rockets coming over this way this time around, and we're being told that those are rockets that the IDF is shooting towards Gaza. We did hear massive booms just about 5 or 10 minutes ago on that side. So given the direction that we're standing at, it does sound like the IDF is now targeting, striking in Gaza. They were very, very loud booms, which means they must have landed somewhere. It didn't sound exactly like the IDF, the Iron Dome missile intercepting any rockets.
And speaking of the Iron Dome, Batia, walk us through exactly how this equipment works for the people at home who aren't here in the country and aren't familiar with it.
Well, there's been quite a few videos circulating on the IDF pages about the fact that this IDF missile is instructed to follow the trajectory of the rockets being fired from Gaza. It's amazing footage, really very clever device, Sarah, that it's able to follow the rocket even when it changes direction in order to intercept it. But the Iron Dome is only 80 to 95% effective. It doesn't strike down all of the rockets that are coming, in particular when there's such a massive barrage of hundreds of rockets coming all at once. At that point, some of them do fall in open areas, some of them do fall in residential areas. We were just a few hours ago at the house here in Sderot that was hit, where that 5-year-old boy, Ido Avigal, was killed yesterday from the shrapnel that landed into his apartment from the direct hit in the apartment just next door. But the Iron Dome is definitely a very exclusive and life-saving device here in Israel. It's needed to protect the civilians here on the ground, and hopefully we won't hear any more of those interceptions going off tonight in this area, but they haven't been used for the last 4 hours here, Sarah. Very quiet in Sderot.
I've even heard from people, Batia, who don't have a shelter, who say that they just solely rely on the technology of the Iron Dome. And Batia, tell me, Israel is preparing for a potential ground invasion there in Gaza. Tell me, what have you been seeing in terms of military presence?
There's been no military presence at the moment here in Sderot. We have heard the reports of that ground operation, but we have heard the military members saying that they are prepared for that ground operation. Not that they have gone in at the moment at all, but given the escalation in this area, given the constant barrage of rockets that are coming over, the military seems to be getting more eager, in a sense, to make sure that this is enough to stop the rockets from coming over. At the moment, it just seems to be an air operation, but that could escalate into a ground operation, and which would end up being a full-fledged war between Gaza and Israel. At the moment, we have seen quite a bit of police presence. We've seen quite a bit of ambulance and rescue worker presence here in Sderot, given the climate here. But at the moment, no army officials in the city.
And what about, Batia, these restrictions for residents there in the south? I understand that the last few days these restrictions have been lifted and then put back on again regarding people not leaving their homes, not being able to go anywhere, really.
It sort of brings back a bit of the coronavirus restrictions that were put in place by the Israeli government as to what stays and what goes and what changes. The reality here is the residents have known rocket fire and this type of flare-up and conflict for so many years that they are used to getting instructions like this: stay in your home, come out of your home. The last couple of hours, as I mentioned, have been relatively quiet, so that the Home Front Command has allowed people to sort of go out. There's been a grocery store here that's been open. We've seen residents coming to get food. But sometimes when that flare-up does get really critical and those barrage of rockets are coming over the border, the residents are told to stay indoors. But again, it's conflicting and it's changing all the time. But the residents here are so used to something like this, sadly, that they understand what is put on them in terms of those restrictions, and they're very flexible in terms of being able to adapt to them.
All right, Batia Levinthal, thank you very much.